The shift towards content and context in planning is really, really important, and that expands across all channels, especially CTV. We are big believers in Havas of context-first planning, and that's important because it allows us to identify growth moments that are more important for a given brand or business throughout a planning cycle, and they could be at a micro level or a macro level, and that's very, very important for things like new buyers or category entry points. So from a strategic perspective, it has a big value. When you break it down into media planning as well, the power of context obviously has is a big accelerator for things like attention. So being in the right place, the right time, with the right message is something that we all know, but putting that into practice is even more important. When you bring that into the world of CTV, things get really interesting. Because CTV has grown so much, the scale is there, the opportunity around context has grown dramatically. We've moved away from just thinking about the live sport opportunity that's been so important to things like linear, to getting into massive opportunities around different cultural levers, different passion points, and different fandoms and genres that add massive value to a brand.
Wanted to look a little bit more in terms of how you get your arms around those micro and macro moments, Jackie. Want to know, where does AI and predictive intelligence fit into the smarter CTV planning and understanding, particularly when it comes to future viewing behavior?
That's a great question, and it comes back to audience. Like for us at Havas, we've invested so much into AI. I'm sure like many other of our industry colleagues will say in a similar way. But for us, when you think about the audience work that was happening in the past, we could have had a huge amount of intelligence around a given audience, how they think, how they behave. That can now be matched through agentic and pulled directly into our buys, which is a huge opportunity. So it changes the dynamic from thinking of things like demos and proxies to thinking of way more sophisticated ways of buying CTV. For example, what personality types respond better to horror? That type of connection is where we're going in the future, and I think that's really exciting, because then you think about the content question we had a second ago. That opens up an array of opportunities in terms of being more relevant to the right people at the right time with that messaging.
So that leads right into a relevance question I had. So want to know, how is Havas helping clients ensure that ads appear in the right moment, right time for intention and engagement?
We are, besides AI, like everyone else, we are also a big attention agency. And this is something I, in particular, am very passionate about. I have been doing comms planning for 20 years. And I find comms planning can be talked about much of the time from an audience perspective, and that's very important. And it's important that we have the right role for comms, matching the right audiences in the right way. But the other part of it is effectiveness. So understanding what levers we're pulling from a comms perspective is essential, and attention plays such a significant role in that. We have partnerships globally with Lumen, who are obviously leading the space in attention. And in the US, we have a second partnership with Adelaide. So we actually have two different data sets that we can use, which is really powerful and powers our whole attention suite of planning tools. That helps planners make decisions around what budget allocations we should be looking at when we think about how we're stacking our video spend across different platforms and channels. So what's the attentive mix of one will be very different to the other. And for the same budget, we have a way of using AI and tech to establish what the right mix is for a given budget, basically, to generate higher attention.
Jackie, you touched on two notable partnerships that Havas has entered into. Wanted to know specifically what kind of new types of data partnerships or interoperability that you're looking at in terms of truly unlocking optimization. What are you doing there?
So we obviously, besides attention, we work with so many different media owners. One thing about Havas that makes us a little bit different is that we actually rent all of our data. So partnerships is very much at the core of how we build our data platforms. And that's from both an audience perspective, but also it goes all the way right into being able to activate that data with key partners we have, like for example, Viant would be a good one, where it's a great example of their tech, their IDs really match our own data spine, and we have that kind of synergy going through. That's one thing. One thing I'll say when it gets to CTV, I get a little bit nervous around optimization. As someone who's a comms planner and maybe a brand strategist traditionally, the risk I see in the future, although CTV has this wonderful power of being able to do upper funnel, mid funnel, lower funnel, when we start over optimizing, we put the power of the whole channel into the mid funnel. And I think the opportunity to supercharge your equity and build brands for the future can get lost in that mix. So that's where I spend a lot of my time talking to the teams to make sure we're also thinking about the breadth of the reach stack. And that's why the attention planner we've created, for example, is a way to kind of help us circumnavigate that piece.
Lastly, Jackie, Havas has made some news at CES this week. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, we're busy. We have a huge display up in the Maripol room, and I mean, I was up there earlier. It's very busy. Everyone's very excited. Yannick is doing a keynote in an hour, so we're excited about that too. And then tomorrow we have a roundtable on modern wellness. So we actually have a new modern wellness practice at Havas, and we are soft launching that tomorrow with a really interesting roundtable with key modern wellness relevant clients. And we have a number of product provocations and discussion points to land around the future of that whole category and the phenomenal growth we're seeing in that space.